What up, Ho Biscuits? It's your girl Skitten, back at it again, and welcome to night 3 of hashtag 8 Nights of Halloween. As promised, I am bringing you spooky, scary content all the way through October 31st, Halloween night. Today's video is called 13 Terrifying Serial Killers You've Definitely Never Heard of, and I really like that concept. I've never been super into true crime or like really interested in serial killers like, what's that guy's name? They keep making movies about him. Ted Bundy. I'm not really into Ted Bundy or Jeffrey Dahmer or anything, but I have watched all 3 seasons of You and rooted for Joe, even though I know I shouldn't be. I hope you guys are doing well. I hope you guys are staying safe and sanitized. I hope that you are enjoying your Halloween season in the ways that you like the best. Do you like watching horror movies? I hope you're doing that. Do you like just staying at home, snuggling, maybe reading a spooky book or two? I hope you're doing that. Do you not want to be scared at all? I hope that you're doing that too, because those of us who don't like to be scared deserve to not be scared. Huh? Yeah, I said it. Auntie who's in, without further ado, let's go ahead and get started.
Jeffrey Dahmer, Ted Bundy, John Wayne Gacy, and of course, the mysterious Jack the Ripper. They're names that strike fear into the hearts of any true crime buff. These are the household names of serial killers, but they're not the whole story. It's estimated that in 1987 alone, there were almost 200 serial killers operating in the US, and you probably haven't heard of most of them. But that doesn't mean that they were any less deadly than the more famous ones. Here are 13 of the most terrifying serial killers you've never heard of. Number 13, Vicki Dawn Jackson. Hospitals are places of healing, and of course, one of the most important positions is the nurse. While the doctors do the trickiest procedures, nurses are the ones who interact the most with patients.
Real quick, because of that, I'm gonna need all y'all anti-vax nurses to get your fucking shit together, okay? Get it together.
That gave Vicki Dawn Jackson, a nurse at a North Texas hospital, the opportunity she needed. She was known as a wallflower in town, a quiet woman who never attracted much attention. But at her hospital in 2001, there was a mysterious epidemic of cases where patients came down with mysterious respiratory ailments and died, despite sometimes being hospitalized for minor ailments. Up to 20 patients had died, and the hospital soon realized that Jackson had been the last person to see all of them. But what was killing them? The investigation soon revealed missing vials of mivacurium chloride, a drug that can paralyze the breathing reflex. Despite a syringe with traces of the drug being found in her house and witnesses reporting that she referred to taking care of patients who were causing trouble, it took over a year for her to be arrested. While she could have faced the death penalty for the 10 counts of murder she was charged with, she ultimately pled no contest to the charges and is serving a life sentence. But her attorney is calling for a new trial.
Why?
No one expected her to be a serial killer, but the same can't be.
What you mean he's asking for a new trial? Nah, that bitch needs to rot in prison. The hell?
For the next killer. Number 12, Karl Panzer. Born to East Prussian immigrants in Minnesota, Karl Panzer was trouble from the time he was young. He was a notorious bully. He was in court for being drunk and disorderly from as young as 11 years old in 1902. His parents sent him to a reform school, and he was treated horribly by the staff members, leading him to burn it down. He spent the next decade in and out of juvenile hall and eventually prison, getting into fights wherever he went. But he was just ramping up his campaign of violence. Under an alias, he joined a ship's crew, and he and a fellow sailor stole a boat and killed the inhabitants. While his partner in crime was arrested, Panzer had his key to the world. His reign of terror was only beginning. After robbing the William H. Taft Mansion in Connecticut, Panzer had enough money to go anywhere he wanted. He traveled the world, killing men and boys alike. He was particularly fond of luring drunken sailors away and killing them. While he was arrested a few times for minor crimes, they never tied him to his murders, and he went on to travel to Portuguese Angola and kill people while working on an oil rig. It was 1928 when he was finally arrested back in America for a burglary and confessed to several murders. He was given a sentence of 25 years to life and quickly turned it into a death sentence by murdering a foreman. As he awaited execution, Panzer penned an autobiography where he claimed to have murdered 22 people. although only proof of 5 was
Oh my
found.
God.
He went to the gallows in 1930, taunting the executioner before the final drop. The next killer had a distinctly more innocent personality. Sometimes.
Oh, hell no.
Number 11. Harrison Graham. Harrison Graham was a seemingly nondescript man living in Philadelphia in the 1980s. He had a history of problems in school and showed signs of an intellectual disability, but had lived mostly a quiet life and worked in the construction industry. But by 1983, he was living in a notorious drug den and had begun dealing pills himself.
shit.
He still had a reputation as a good neighbor, but there was just one problem: a foul smell
Like a good neighbor, he will kill you.
coming from his apartment. His landlord tried to evict him, but Graham refused to let him in and fled out the fire escape. The police were called to break open the apartment. What they found was horrifying. 2 recently killed women's bodies were found within, as well as 5 skeletons of women who had been killed long ago. A massive manhunt was launched for Graham, and he was eventually convinced to turn himself in by his mother.
Oh
There
my
he confessed to the
God.
killings, saying he strangled the women while on drugs, but it soon became clear that he might not have been in his right mind. He was fixated on a Cookie Monster toy and seemed to switch between 3 personalities: Frank, a drug-addicted killer; Junior, a confused toddler; and Marty, a friendly man eager to cooperate. While the judge rejected his insanity defense and he was
course.
convicted of all the murders, there were doubts about his competence. He was sentenced to death but was required to serve out a life sentence first, meaning he would never be executed. In prison, he was a model inmate and actually became an ordained minister. The next killer was discovered in an even more shocking fashion. Number 10. Bella Kiss. The year was 1914 and World War I was sweeping across the European continent. Countless young men on both sides of the conflict were drafted into action, and one was the quiet Hungarian tinsmith Bella Kiss. Twice married and the father of 2, Kiss was very interested in finding himself another woman. He had a long-distance correspondence with women through newspapers and claimed to offer his services as a fortune teller. His neighbors thought him an odd man, particularly for his obsession with the large oil drums he used to hoard gasoline for the coming war. They had no idea how right they were. After Kiss was drafted, the Budapest police came to confiscate the drums of gasoline for use by soldiers, but the drums were given off an odd smell, and when the soldiers opened them, they were horrified. Each of the drums contained the body of a murdered woman. In total, 24 bodies were found, and suddenly Kiss became one of the most wanted men in Europe.
24?
A search of his house had found that he'd been collecting information about murder and had been defrauding and killing women for years. The military police eventually tracked Kiss down to a Serbian hospital, but the savvy serial killer was one step ahead. He placed another soldier's body in his bed, escaped, and was never seen again.
Bitch!
He wasn't the only serial killer to terrorize the European
y'all
continent
lose
in the
him?
early 1900s. Number 9. Peter Kürten. German Peter Kürten had one of the most common stories of serial killers, being raised in an abusive home himself. Kürten didn't take long to follow in his father's footsteps, enjoying torturing animals and attempting to drown a playmate at the age of 5.
Bitch,
He
what?
would later claim to have begun his killing spree at the age of 9, pushing a child off a raft and leaving him to drown. As an adult, he spent time in and out of prison for a series of petty crimes, and his crimes soon escalated. Unlike many serial killers, he didn't have a favorite weapon.
He
He
just
would
liked
use
killing
whatever
people.
was available, and the police had no
'cause
idea
he
a
doesn't
serial
have a
killer was on the
fucking
loose.
MO.
But Kürten would soon gain the nickname the Vampire of Dusseldorf. Kürten would kill at least 9 victims over his decades-long killing spree, but he was undone by a simple mistake. When a young woman named Maria Budlick escaped from him in the woods, she told of her close encounter with Kürten in a letter to a friend. When the letter addressed incorrectly was opened by a postal worker, she gave it to the police, who got enough information from Maria to finally arrest Kürten. While his attorneys attempted an insanity defense, the jury was horrified by his many
bro.
crimes
Nah,
and
you
sent
out,
him to the
bro.
guillotine. His head is currently on display at Ripley's Believe It or Not
His
in
head?
Wisconsin. This next killer was about as unassuming as it gets. Number 8. Lydia Sherman. Born in 1824, Lydia Sherman was an orphan raised by her uncle and married her first husband at 16. But after he lost his job in 1864, Sherman wasted no time. She poisoned him with arsenic
She
after
said,
taking out
"Nah,
insurance
bro.
money on him. She collected the payout
gotta
and then
provide
set her
for
sights
me.
on more targets. 3 of her young children died tragically of typhoid fever within the next year, except that the true case of the death was arsenic, once again, allowing her to collect the insurance money.
Oh
In
my
total, she would
God.
poison 6 of her own children, 3 husbands
Your
and
own
2
babies?
stepchildren, but would go undetected until 1872 because who would suspect
Your
a
own
widow?
babies?
When she was eventually arrested and convicted of second-degree murder, she would even be able to escape and find work as a housekeeper to a rich
The
widower.
devil.
He would be soon to meet an unfortunate
devil.
fate as well, but Sherman was eventually caught and returned to prison, dying less than a year later from cancer. The next killer was able to
Amen.
carefully abuse his position of authority. Number 7, Gerard
Unsurprising.
Schaefer. In Martin County, Florida, in 1972, Gerard John Schaefer Jr. was the law. A sheriff's deputy, he had been working patrol since he was 25 years old. But he had a sick obsession. From a young age, he had been fixated with spying on young women and killing animals. He was fired from a teaching job and rejected from the priesthood in quick succession before turning to law enforcement. That job would come to an end as well when he picked up 2 teenage hitchhikers and kidnapped them, tying them up in the woods. When they escaped and reported Schaefer, he claimed he had just been trying to teach them a
Nigga, you
lesson.
can't do
He was
that.
fired,
Hello?
but it was only the beginning. 2 months later, Schaefer would kidnap and murder 2 teenage girls, and similarities between that case and the hitchhikers who escaped led police to look into Schaefer. They searched his house and found disturbing stories full of descriptions of kidnapping and murdering women who he referred to as whores. While Schaefer was only convicted of the 2 murders and given a life sentence, he was suspected in the murders of up to 30 women and girls around the country, something he would boast about to anyone who would listen. But he would take those secrets to his grave when he was stabbed to death by a fellow inmate in 1995. This
Get him
next
outta
killer
here.
led to a campaign of terror across the Great White North. Number 6, Robert William Picton. Robert Picton was a pig farmer in a small town in British Columbia.
When you are a farmer, how do you even have time to be murdering people? Don't you have to like tend to the crops, shovel manure, mow the lawn or some shit, pick vegetables? How do you have time to be out here killing people?
And he had a dark past. He and his brother's farm was a run-down place that many people suspected was a front for criminal and gang activity. And in 1997, he was arrested for the
They have gang activity in Canada? Y'all got gangs up there? Y'all be banging up in Canada? For real?
attempted murder of a sex worker.
shit.
But Bill Hiscox, a worker on the farm, noticed one thing he couldn't ignore. Women who visited the farm kept going missing. After police obtained a warrant to search the farm for fireworks, they were able to get enough evidence to charge Picton with 6 murders,
Jesus.
for which he was sentenced to life in prison. But they eventually added charges for 20 murders. While he wasn't convicted of those new charges, he reportedly taunted authorities that he was only one short of 50 murders when he was caught. Picton wound up being notable not just for being the most prolific serial killer in Canadian history, but for inadvertently bringing attention to the number of First Nations Canadian women who go missing each year. Our next killer was able to hide behind a pretty face for a time. Number 5, the co-ed killer. It was 1967 when an area of Ann Arbor, Michigan was terrorized by a serial killer. Young women started turning up dead one by one after being stabbed, strangled, or mutilated. The first victim, Mary Fleeser, would be found on an abandoned farm by 2 teenage boys, but it would be almost a year before the horror repeated itself. When the second victim was said to have been seen with college student John Norman Collins, the police questioned him, but the charming young man was soon let go for lack of evidence.
They always say they're charming. They always do.
6 more young women would be found dead, but when Collins' name came up again, the police zeroed in on him and searched his house. They found bloodstains, and Collins was charged with murder. The handsome all-American boy was revealed to have a dark obsession with bondage, torture, and murder, and it earned him life in prison where he remains to this day. But the rest of these killers made a name for themselves in sheer numbers. Number 4, the Harp brothers. Often considered America's first serial killers, Micajah and Wiley Harp were terrorizing the American South almost as long as there was a United States. These 2 loyalists to the British Crown had been on the wrong side of the war and became notorious outlaws. Unlike many other serial
just
killers, they
killing
didn't have a specific type of victim, and they didn't seem to be obsessed with killing itself. They committed robberies, they set fire to buildings, and they targeted women and men
They said
alike.
everybody
It
could
wouldn't
get
be
it.
long before posses were organized across Appalachia to hunt for them. While they shared many traits with the highwaymen of the time, often brutal robbers who targeted travelers, the Harps seemed to be in it as much for the thrill as anything.
That makes sense.
They may have killed as many as 50 people before joining up with the notorious Mason gang of river pirates. But when they killed the leader and tried to collect a bounty
Wow,
on him,
guys.
they were recognized and
Really?
arrested. And after a brief escape attempt, the violent rampage of the
How
Harp
y'all
brothers
fucked this
ended
up
at the
for
gallows,
yourselves?
their heads put on display as a warning to other outlaws.
Smart.
These next killers were among the most unlikely. Number 3, Los Poquianchis. Rancho El Angel was a notorious hub of prostitution and other criminal activity in the Mexican state of Guanajuato. But it wasn't run by your everyday cartel leader. It was run by the Gonzalez Valenzuela sisters, a quartet of the most ruthless women Mexico has ever seen. Maria Delfina, Maria del Carmen, Maria Luisa, and Maria de Jesus got away with their crime spree for years, until police picked up a woman named Josefina who had been working as a go-between for the sisters. She was suspected of kidnapping girls to be taken to Rancho El Angel, and she quickly spilled all. What she revealed shocked everyone. The sisters had made Rancho El Angel one of the worst sites of mass murder in Mexican history. The police raid found the bodies of almost 100 people. The sisters had been killing prostitutes when they became too sick or old, forcing them to swallow drugs for transport, and murdering men who came there with lots of money on them. Their crimes exposed, the sisters finally faced trial. Delfina and Carmen died in prison. Maria Luisa went mad and was sent to an asylum, and Maria de Jesus completed her 40-year sentence and was released, with her whereabouts post-prison unknown.
Y'all let her out? Okay, sure, whatever.
Next killer turned the last frontier into his personal killing grounds.
What do you mean?
Number 2, Robert Hansen. Scarred by acne and shy due to his stutter, Robert Hansen didn't seem like the intimidating type, but his unassuming appearance hid a seething hatred for the women who ignored him. After serving a stint in the Army Reserve, Hansen moved to Alaska with his second wife and became deeply involved in hunting. He was arrested several times for assaults, thefts, and abductions, but it wasn't until 1972 that the
How do you get arrested several times for multiple crimes and not be in jail for like a long ass time? That doesn't make any sense. Y'all got people in here serving life sentences for fucking weed. Like, oh my God, this doesn't make any sense.
Really started. Robert Hansen was about to go hunting for bigger game.
Of course he was.
He began targeting sex workers around Anchorage, kidnapping and torturing them. But he wasn't satisfied with simply killing them. He would release them and then proceed to hunt them like animals. Bodies were found around Anchorage, but no connection was found until one of his targets managed to get away. Cindy Paulson managed to escape before being taken to Hansen's isolated cabin and described his truck enough to police that they were able to find him. Hansen was charged with 17 murders, but is believed to have killed up to 21. He was sentenced to 461 years plus life in prison, where he remained until his death in 2014. But for the most prolific killer of them all, you have to go to South America. Number 1. The Monster of the Andes.
Who is this?
Pedro Lopez grew up in Colombia, one of 13 children, and displayed disturbing behavior from when he was young, reportedly abusing his siblings. By 18, he was a car thief and did time in prison where he reported being horribly abused. He was released, but what came out of prison was something different and terrible. He would soon move to Peru and began targeting young girls. He claimed to have killed over 100 when he was captured by a local tribe. They planned to execute him, but a local missionary convinced them to hand him over.
God damn it, getting involved in shit that's none of your business. Y'all should have let him get killed. What? I'm not supposed to say that. Y'all should have let him be punished according to his actions.
The police released him. A terrible mistake.
What the fuck?
He would return to Colombia and then to Ecuador and continue his hunt until he was caught in 1980 while trying to abduct a girl by some market traders. When he was taken into custody, he confessed to killing over 100 girls. While the police were dubious, they were about to get horrifying proof. A flash flood revealed a mass grave containing many of his victims. He was sentenced to prison for killing 110 girls, but was shockingly released in 1998. It wasn't long before he was suspected in another murder in Colombia, but he was never found. The Guinness Book of World Records briefly acknowledged him as the world's most prolific serial killer, but the award has since been removed.
Why would you do that?
After all, no one wants someone to try to top it.
Like I said, I'm not really into serial killers like that, and now I know that shit is so upsetting to me, just like on a deep level. How many things contribute, like obviously like the older ones, law enforcement wasn't as good back then, forensics wasn't as good back then, very rudimentary if it existed at all for like the older ones, but like for the more recent ones, like so many of these people got away with it just because they didn't have the attitude of somebody who would be out here murdering people. It's just so upsetting. It in my tummy, it hurts in my tummy. I feel like that was plenty spooky. I hope it was it as spooky for you as it was for me? Anyways, I hope you guys learned something. I won't say I hope you guys enjoyed the video because I don't think that's the kind of video you enjoy. But don't forget to leave your reaction requests and recommendations down in the comments below. And other than that, peace out, Hope Biscuits. It's Skittin' Lit.